Hi everybody and welcome back to Flex. I'm Iani De Kock, your presenter for Flex. Today we are at Being Well Psychology. We will be talking to Iani De Kock, Clinical Psychologist, and she will be telling us more about meditation and how to properly do it, and actually also showing us. So it's definitely going to be an exciting episode and also a very calming episode. So I hope you guys stay tuned, and so that we all can learn to value our mental health and our mental well-being a bit more. So stay tuned, guys, and I hope you enjoy it and that you take a lot away from today's episode. So welcome to the interview, everybody. I'm Iani De Kock, and with me is Iani De Kock. She is a clinical psychologist. Iani, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Good to be here. How are you?
Yes, it's all. I really love your space, but I'm doing good. Yeah. So Iani, can you perhaps just tell us more about your practice and what it is that you do?
Well, I am a clinical psychologist. So as most clinical psychologists, I do work with all things in terms of mental health, mental illness, well-being, and then particularly what I love, my great love in life, is big groups of people. So I do mental training for athletes, particularly for the Eagles, the national cricket team. And then also I am a co-owner of the Mindfulness Institute of Namibia that does group-based meditation sessions, particularly structured programs that are evidence-based to really just help people reclaim their lives, and particularly their mental space. So it reduces anxiety, it helps with mood, so depression, sadness, all of these things. I just really believe that meditation specifically gives people the tools to take control of their own lives. Yeah. And if you think about our context, not everyone can afford a therapist. So if we can teach people kind of to work better with their mind and with their own well-being, then I think we really do empower people.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, I don't know, Namibians, we're not very well versed with meditation and how it works, because it's a process, isn't it? Can you perhaps just also explain the importance of it and how anyone can do it, and actually also how to get started? Yeah.
Okay. Well, first thing you have to understand is there are so many different kinds of meditation. So we specialize in mindfulness, and mindfulness is awareness training. So it's for concentration, it's for focus, but it also teaches you to kind of distance yourself from your thoughts, so that you and your thoughts are not the same. Yeah. So it changes your relationship to your thoughts rather than changing your thoughts. But then you also get meditations like transcendental meditation, which is where people chant. So that can be like Om, Mani Padme Om, these things. And they kind of push your thoughts away. So they distance you from your thoughts in a whole different way. And then you get all kinds of other like meditations, like, chakra work and energy work and all of that. But for mental health specifically, mindfulness has the best evidence base. So there's a lot of research that shows how it works. Okay. And particularly what mindfulness does for me, particularly in terms of wellness compared to other kinds of meditation, is two things. Number one, it teaches us that we are not our thoughts. So your thoughts are like weather patterns, they come and go. So you don't really have to believe your thoughts, which is revolutionary. Most of us walk around believing every single voice in our head. You really don't have to. And the second thing that it does that I believe is often missing is it teaches you to love yourself, to be kind, to be compassionate. And I think very often if you teach meditation separately from teaching people to be kind, it can be very problematic, because this is something people always tell me, like, I can't meditate, my head, there's too many thoughts. Like, yes, all of us. Yeah. And that noise in our head, that voice, is very often not our best friend. It's very often quite mean. Yes. Sometimes it's like, no, you've been good, you deserve that second glass of wine. And then the second you do, then it's like, no, can't believe you had that second glass of wine. So that voice in your head is really not our friend. So learning to meet that voice with, one, disbelief, you don't have to believe it, and two, just with kindness, to be kind of nice to yourself. It's super duper important.
I like how you said that we have to distance ourselves from our thoughts, because a lot of the time people think that what's going on in their head, that's who they are, that's their personality. So because I think that's a misconception that we all grew up with. The Afrikaans saying is waar die hart van vol is, loop die mond van oor. Yeah. So would you say that that is also kind of your thoughts, your heart, or is your heart or the person who you really are a completely different person? And how do you discover that person?
Well, if you talk about personality, some aspects of our personality are quite fixed. If you look at personality schools like the Big Five. So, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, that changes a little bit, but it's pretty fixed. Also, like how open-minded or close-minded you are tends to be more fixed and not so fluid, but we can change. And I think how personality often works is, maybe something bad happens. Let's just say like you get dumped. And now for the next week someone says, why do you look so sad? And you go like, oh, well, this thing happened and now I'm sad.
Yeah.
But now it's been a month, or maybe it's even been a year. And then you're like, why are you so sad?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, this thing happened a year ago. And then this becomes your mood. Mood is a long-term kind of like climate of how you feel. And then it's been 5 years. And people are like, well, why are you always so sad? You're like, well, this thing happened 5 years ago. And then it's your personality. So how I always explain it to people is that your brain is like a muscle. So the way that we think forms little neural connections.
Okay.
So the more you think sad thoughts or anxious thoughts or paranoid thoughts or thoughts about distrust of your partner, the more you think it, the more normal it becomes. And then not thinking that way becomes difficult. So a lot of what we do in therapy really is we teach people new ways of thinking so you can wire your brain so you can have new thoughts. So now our thoughts are definitely not a reflection of reality, but it has a super strong impact on who we are.
Yeah, okay. And talking about our thoughts and being mindful, how does that play a role with your overall wellness and how you, like your immune system, your health, your physical health and everything?
Wonderful question. It affects everything. So my favorite biologist, Robert Sapolsky, he wrote this book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Okay.
And it really talks about how humankind, we think way more than is really necessary. And every time if I have an argument with you right now, then we have to go into stress response, right? But if I keep on thinking about the argument we had all day and I go like, well, I should have said that. And if I see her again, oh, she's going to get it.
Yeah.
Then I'm thinking about the stressor and my body responds in stress as well. So because we're constantly thinking stressful thoughts, it's constantly producing stress hormones in your body, cortisol, adrenaline, and these things affect everything. If you have very high levels of cortisol and adrenaline over a period of time, it impacts your immune system. Okay, it affects your brain because if you're constantly in fight or flight mode, then your body prioritizes its energy for your body so that you can run away or you can protect yourself. And that means a lot of the energy gets diverted away from our brain, particularly our logical frontal brain, from our digestion, so your digestion gets affected, from your reproduction. So that's why you'll see very often people who struggle with fertility issues very often are very, very stressed. So it's actually their stress that's the big impact. So when we learn to control our mind and we learn to have more quality thoughts than quantity thoughts, it means that we are thinking less, so we don't have as much stress in our body, which means our immune system is healthier. Overall, a healthy mind is a healthy body is a healthy mind.
Yeah. So do you think one comes first? Does a healthy mind come before a healthy body?
I think they're like this. So very often people come here and then they suffer from depression, and I ask them, well, what are your hobbies? No hobbies.
Yeah.
What exercise do you do? No exercise, because they can barely get out of bed. But they found just 10 minutes of exercise has an equal impact as an antidepressant. So I think very often before we start thinking about things like medication, we should first look at things like meditation and to exercise. So a healthy body, if you are physically healthy, your mind tends to be more healthy as well. But very often we also have to start mentally. Very often we have to get people in a mindset where their mood is improved, or their self-belief and self-esteem is improved before we can start working on their bodies.
Yeah. Going back to the stress that you talked about, that when you constantly think those stressful thoughts or think about stressful situations, when you are in a stressful situation, can you also distance yourself from that stress and just be that calm center? How does that work? And because a lot of times what I notice is when you are in a stressful situation, it's difficult to impart your calmness to the next person. It's more likely that they will affect you. And how can you, what's the basics of not becoming that stress?
What a great question. Now, well, to answer this question, you have to understand that our brain has got special neurons called mirror neurons. They're in your frontal brain, which means if I bump my toe, you go... So that's why people yawn, you yawn. If someone laughs, you can't help but smile. And that's why if someone is aggressive or anxious in your presence, we start feeling that anxiety and we start feeling that aggression. It's because of the mirror neurons in your brain who pick up on the cues around you. Now, when we're in an argument, very often these mirror neurons stop working, so we both become defensive. And what we want to try and do is to not be defensive, because if we're defensive, you're in your central brain, that's where your feelings live. Where our reasons, if you want to be rational and you want to be calm, that's your frontal brain. So yes, we can absolutely train our brains using meditation to be more calm. And one of the most potent ways that they found this is something called heart-centeredness or heart coherence. And these are breathing techniques and meditation techniques that you can use to just regulate your heartbeat so that your heartbeat remains calm. So if your heartbeat remains calm and your mind, your mental chatter remains calm, even if there's stress in your environment, you are more likely to stay calm.
To stay calm. Okay, now that is very interesting. What I also think is that sometimes we take meditation away from the science, and then you're like, this is just...
Ooh.
Yes, exactly. It's not real. It's not what we should be doing. Why do you think we have that perception towards meditation, and especially as an African nation, why are we as Africans more likely to not believe meditation or believe in your mental health?
Well, I think there are two major things. The first one is really, I do think that there's a long history of meditation being associated with not spiritual or not religious. So it goes against the Bible. And these days we're seeing an explosion in terms of Christian meditation. I think really because of authors like Caroline Leaf. There's a lot of research now where we are able to kind of look at it just being a skill set. So you don't have to bring any spiritualism into meditation. This is why I love mindfulness, because it's completely science-based. They've taken out anything that is religious at all. It's completely secular. So it's just about the techniques, which means you can really use meditation regardless of where you come from.
Okay.
I think the second thing that's really big in our context is, number one, we don't really believe in mental health, because I know a lot of our cultures, you just have to be strong and suck it up.
Yes.
And I think that's why we have such a global mental health crisis. And I think the big thing that happens is when people start meditating for the first time, your mental chatter is louder. You know, when you try, everyone's like, I can't meditate because I can't stop my mind.
Yeah.
None of us can. And the idea is that, you know, you start training your mind. It's like going to the gym for the first time. You can only do one sit-up. And every time that your mind runs away and you bring it back, that's one sit-up. I call it brain gym. So that's one sit-up in your brain gym that you've done. And the more you do it, the more you'll notice it's easier to start controlling or directing where your mind goes. But in the beginning, our mind is all over the place, and then people are like, no, meditation sucks because my mind is so loud, my feelings are so loud. It's really not pleasant. And meditation can be boring. It can be very boring. It can be very frustrating. But you know, very often going to the physical gym is the same.
It's the same, yes, exactly. Yeah. So would you say that like at the physical gym, when you do something wrong, you get like a strained ankle or a sprained ankle? Does that work the same then with our mind? If you do it wrong, then you can sprain your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think a very valuable question. We refer to this as the dark side of mindfulness, and there's a lot of research that has gone into, the potentially adverse effects of meditation. And what they found is, yes, If you are anxious or you are depressed, if you start meditating on your own, very often because the mental chatter gets more loud, you can actually become more depressed. Or you can become more anxious because it's missing that secret sauce, the key ingredient, which is that kindness. That kindness that we cultivate in mindfulness. And if you use an app, I use apps, I really do, and I use YouTube, but I've noticed they rarely talk about this element of non-judgment. Don't judge the content of your mind. They don't talk about this compassion and this kindness and this curiosity that you have to bring towards yourself. And they don't really talk about actually just distancing yourself and just observing your mind. If you read the research and you read books on it, they do. But if you're just looking on an app and you're just putting on a meditation, often they don't.
Yeah.
And I think it can sometimes definitely do harm. And especially if you get to the more complex meditations like breath work, we have transformational breath work that you can do where you literally hyperventilate until your trauma comes up. And again, if you don't understand what's happening, it can be traumatizing in itself. And if you don't have someone to help integrate whatever comes up for you, you're sitting with that.
Yeah.
And you need a professional to help you just figure out what to do with that.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of times, even when you're doing exercise, it's easy to find the YouTube stuff, but at the end of the day, it's also very helpful to have a professional there that can guide you through everything. So yeah, that was quite interesting that you said that there's a dark side to it as well. So to prevent that, the only way is to then talk to a professional or be in a space where meditation is done.
Yeah, I think if you can do it in a group, all the better, because if something comes up, you have support. But also if you can focus, if you're going to do it by yourself, if you can focus and prioritize meditations like loving kindness and compassion, it's known as the metta. So meditations that are about loving yourself, about being nice to yourself, about distancing yourself from your mind, I think that's maybe a great starting point on your meditation journey, learning to be nice to yourself.
That's the thing, constantly said be nice to others, but then you're not nice to yourself, and that's probably the most important part of it all. Okay, now Iani, is there anything that you would like to add to this discussion that you feel that we need to hear at this point in time of our lives and where we are as a nation as well?
Yeah, I do think that training your mind, mindfulness or brain gym, is a superpower in this world. Particularly if you consider how much unknowns we're dealing with right now. We can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. And this makes a lot of people really, really anxious. And we've got a lot of job losses and unemployment in the economy. So there are more reasons to stress than ever before. But at the same time, if you stress, it affects your immune system, and then you're more likely to get ill. So I think in this day and age in Namibia, I think it's super important that we learn to start taking our well-being and our mental health in our own hands, and to take it seriously for our own health and also really for our families. Your families want you around. So make sure that you are mentally and physically healthy so that whatever comes we can deal with more productively.
Yeah. Now, isn't it expensive to go to a psychologist or go to someone to help you?
Yeah, it really is. Again, if you compare our rates, we're still cheaper than anywhere else on earth, but it is expensive. I also don't think medical aids always understand, that someone coming with depression, they've been sitting with their depression for years, often 10, 15 years. So it's deeply, deeply ingrained in their brains. And we can see on brain scans that depression is a brain thing, anxiety is a brain thing, OCD, you can see, like we said, your brain is a muscle. So different structures have a six-pack. And if you want us to unwire that and start helping someone change their brain in a more positive direction, that's not going to happen in 4 sessions.
Yeah.
So medical aids often give us 4 to 6 sessions, which is really scratching the surface. So I think, yes, it is expensive to see a therapist. So what I always tell people is, if you don't have medical aid, consider Lifeline Childline. They offer incredible services. So they've got lay counselors. They're not so clued up necessarily in terms of like long-term depression, all of these things. But if you need someone to talk to, they've got a helpline. They're always available. And then there's, in Windhoek at least, there's the state hospital. And the state hospital has got state psychologists on staff. So you're still going to get your therapy for free, at least if you're in Windhoek. Okay, so for the rest of the country, I always say look at the lay councils that are in your neighborhood, and then every single district hospital should have a social worker. And we have got the most incredible social workers in this country. So they're all trained in counseling. So if you really are stuck and you really do need professional help, those are your resources. And then, of course, talk to your neighbors, talk to your pastor, talk to people all around you. But in terms of these professional skill sets, we have a particular skill set. I mean, we trained for 6-7 years to become clinical psychologists. So if you are suffering with a clinical disorder, and I'm talking about really depression with suicidality, anxiety that's preventing you from going to work, that is, you will need professional help. So do consider improving your medical aid, or hopefully we are talking to the medical aides and they hear this message, and we see what we can do in terms of giving people more auxiliary services so they can afford professional help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Iani. That will bring us to the end of the interview, and of course you can find Iani on Facebook. Can you just, the Mental Health Institute, right?
Yeah, so we've got the Mindfulness Institute of Namibia, MINA, and we are also on Facebook, and we've got a website being mindfulnessnamibia.com, and then of course I'm Being Well Psychology, and that's www.beingwellpsychology.com, also on Facebook. So we'll see you online.
Yes, thank you so much, Iani.
Okay, so I thought about what we can do today, and I think what I'm going to teach you is simple techniques to control your nervous system. Okay. So as we said, it's your nervous system that affects your adrenaline, your cortisol. So there are 3 techniques that you need to do to master your nervous system, and they're all breathing techniques. The first technique we'll do is known as awareness of breath, or mindfulness of breathing. And with awareness of breath, we don't do anything, we just observe our breath. So that's you kind of to notice, is my heart beating quickly, or is it slow, or what's going on in my head that's making my body react like this. So after the awareness of breath, when you notice like, ooh, my heart's a little quick, or like, ooh, I'm super calm, then you can decide what's the next techniques that you want to do. Do you want a technique to psych you up? In other words, to make your heart beating a little bit more and give you more adrenaline, if that's what you want? Or do you want the opposite? Do you want a technique to slow down your heart rate and make you nice and calm, and maybe even help you sleep at night? Okay, so we'll do awareness of breath, and the next one we'll do is an activating breath. That's known as 20 connected breaths. It makes your heart beat quickly. And then we'll do something called double ratio breathing, meaning slow or quick inhales, slow exhales. Okay, so the idea is really our diaphragm that sits here, when we inhale, it presses down and it squeezes your heart. And because it's squeezing your heart beats more quickly. So if we have breathing that's focused on inhaling a lot, you're going to increase your heart. It's simple as that. So inhale-based breathing is a psyching up technique. It increases your heart rate, and then the opposite is true. So when we exhale, your diaphragm pulls up, which means it releases the pressure from your heart, and your heart actually beats more slowly. So if you want a slow heartbeat and you want to relax, then you want exhale focused breathing techniques. It really is that simple. Inhale is fast, exhale is slow. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready, let's do this.
Okay, so for breathing, you just want to sit nice and upright, because you can't breathe slumped over. So good, nice posture. And for awareness of breath, you can do it with your eyes open, you can do it with your eyes closed, it really doesn't matter. But all you want to do is, if you are keeping your eyes open, kind of just soften them so that your focus is inwards. And then all you're going to do is you're going to notice your breathing. So we're not changing your breathing in any way. All you're doing is you're noticing that your inhale comes in, and then there's a little pause, and then you exhale, and there's a little pause, and then you inhale. And we're simply observing the inhales followed by the exhales. And then what you want to notice is, what is your breathing telling you about your state of mind? Is your breathing quick? Is it prescient? Or is your breathing nice and slow? And generally, if we sit in this meditation for about 1 or 2 minutes, you'll also notice that your mind will start running away. You'll start thinking about your to-do list. You'll start thinking about the past or the future. Whenever you notice that, simply notice the thought, and then you wave it goodbye in your mind, say not now, I'll come back, and then you refocus on your inhale, your exhale, your inhale, your Simple as that. So we're going to do this for another minute or two, where I'm going to speak a little bit less so that everyone has an opportunity to see their minds run away. And when your mind runs away, it can be like, am I doing this right? Should it feel like this? Oh gosh, I'm thinking a lot. Simply notice those things and keep your attention on your breath. And then we have a little mantra that you can add, that this breath in is right now. And this breath out is right now. Always in the present. Simply noticing this breath in and this breath out. Wonderful. So Janet, maybe you can tell me, what is your breath telling you? Is your breathing quite calm, or did you notice your heart is a little fast today?
I would say it's in between, like it's calm but it's not fast, it's just there basically.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And were you able to focus on the breathing, or did your mind run away?
I was actually able to focus on the breathing and think about the breathing, be like, okay, is this the way I should breathe? Am I breathing right? Yeah.
Okay, and this is very normal, this mental chatter. It doesn't matter, guys, you're allowed to think. That's the biggest myth. As long as you keep focused on that breathing. The breath is your main anchor, your main focus. Okay, then we're going to go on to our second technique, 20 connected breaths. And it looks like this. So we do 4 sets of 5 breaths. The first 4 is in quickly, out quickly. Because it's, remember, inhale based. So we want the heartbeat to go nice and out. Then our 5th one is in a very slow exhale. And then we'll repeat. Okay. So you guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. So you just follow what I do. So we're going to everything in through the mouth. Okay. And here we go. Again. That's fine. What do you notice in terms of your heart?
I notice it's a bit faster, and I can also somehow feel it in my head as well. Like, it's like the blood is rushing to my brain.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm also feeling that blood rush to the brain. So I've got extra oxygen. You should be like psyched up. Go for a run. Okay.
Yes.
So obviously you don't want to do this if you have anxiety, because it makes you more anxious. You want to do this if you're feeling sluggish.
Okay.
And the little, doff if you're not quite awake. Okay.
That brings us to the end of today's episode. If you guys want to know more about Iani, go to her a Facebook handle as well as her website, which she shared with us in the interview. So let's all take our mental health a bit more serious, especially during the times we're going through. So if you feel that that's important to you, or if you don't feel that's important to you, just think a bit more and don't think at the same time. But thank you guys so much for today, and we'll see you guys next time.